Alrighty, well, good afternoon and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Andrew Doffney. I'm the Instruction and Outreach Librarian at the New Jersey State Library. And it's my pleasure to welcome our speaker for today, Sally Zeifman-Kagan from the Alzheimer's Association's Greater New Jersey chapter. Today, Sally is going to be talking about understanding what dementia is, and specifically Alzheimer's as a form of dementia. I'm going to go over what Alzheimer's disease is, the risk factors and stages, as well as some treatments and resources that'll be available to both individuals suffering from it, their caregivers, medical professionals. So it's a really, really exciting program. We're really glad to have you, Sally.
Thank you.
But before we jump into our presentation, I just have a few housekeeping items to go over.
Sure.
First, we will be taking your questions at the end of Sally's presentation, but you can submit them at any time to us using the Q&A or the chat feature in the Zoom dashboard. At the end of the webinar, there will be a survey available, so we ask that you have time. Please complete the survey. We really appreciate any and all feedback that you can give us. And if you want more information on either what Sally's going to be talking about today or the Alzheimer's Association in general, you can visit their website at www.alz.org. There's tons and tons of information and resources on there, so I encourage you all to explore that at your leisure. They do a really, really fantastic job. And then one last thing I have for you is just a brief overview of the Zoom dashboard. This is what your dashboard should look like if you're using a PC or a Mac. If you're using a mobile device, the dashboard may look a little bit different, but all the features should still be there. In the bottom left-hand corner, you can check your audio settings. So if you're using an external listening device like a headset or earbuds, you can check to make sure it's connected properly there. At any point during the presentation, if you have any issues, there's a raise hand button. You can click on that and that'll alert me. I will send you a message in Zoom and hopefully be able to resolve any problems that you're having. And then, as I mentioned, if you do have questions, you can use either the Q&A or the chat buttons to get in touch with us, and we'll be addressing them at the end of Sally's presentation. So, well, that is everything that I have for you. So, Sally, go ahead and take it away.
Okie dokie. I want to say, first of all, thanks, Andrew, for having us, the Alzheimer's organization, today. And I'm looking forward to sharing a lot of good information with everybody. And again, the Q&A and chat for your questions, be glad to take them after I get through the presentation. So I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Sally Zeifman-Kagan. I am a nurse and I am a community volunteer educator for the Greater New Jersey chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. And I do this in honor of my mom who passed away from Alzheimer's about 10 years ago. And so I really like to be able to present this to people so that they can understand what Alzheimer's is, what dementia is. And so we're going today, in today's program, we will be hearing from experts on the topic, from people living with dementia, and caregivers as well. So here are the learning objectives today. So buckle up because you see there's going to be a lot of things that we will be exploring today. We'll be comparing Alzheimer's and dementia. We'll be identifying the stages of Alzheimer's disease and also talk about some of the current FDA-approved treatments that have been in the news lately and some of the new tests and markers that they have been exploring that can help us to diagnose Alzheimer's disease. And also, as Andrew mentioned, some of the resources that are available to us. And what I'd like to do first is to share with you what the impact of Alzheimer's has today. So let's just, to yourselves, take a little knowledge test for you. Approximately, how many Americans are currently living with Alzheimer's? Perhaps you know this, perhaps you don't. Take a lucky guess or an unlucky guess. The guess and the actuality is that more than 6 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's. 55 million people worldwide are currently living with dementia. So the number also is projected to reach nearly 13 million people in America by 2050. Another question, how many Americans provide unpaid care for people living with Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia? The answer to that is over 11 million people are providing unpaid care for people with Alzheimer's or other dementias. That means that these people are taking off from work. They care for 80% of the care is provided at home. It's delivered by family members, friends, or unpaid caregivers. And over half of employed caregivers report having to go in late, take time off, or quit altogether due to caregiving demands. And it's estimated that caregivers provide more than 16 billion with a B hours of care last year, valued at nearly $272 billion. So you see the personal impact on individuals and families that are facing this, as well as a financial one. And just FYI, one of the resources that is available through the Alzheimer's Association is we have a robust programs, workshops, and support groups specifically dedicated to people who are caregivers. Here's a little brief Know the Facts. Takes your breath away almost to see all those statistics, I'm sure. So you may hear the terms Alzheimer's and dementia used interchangeably. They are related, but they are different. So in this next section, we're going to discuss both Alzheimer's and dementia and how they're related. But before we begin, let's take another little moment to test your knowledge. Here's a question for you. Alzheimer's, true or false? Alzheimer's is a normal part of the aging process. Take a moment to think about that, but I'm going to give you the answer. That's false. Alzheimer's is a brain disease that causes problems with memory, thinking, and behavior. It is not, I repeat, it is not part of the normal aging process. Alzheimer's disease is more than memory loss. It's a progressive and fatal disease that kills nerve cells and tissue in the brain, affecting a person's ability to remember, think, plan, and ultimately function. Well, let's try another one. True or false? People younger than age 65 can get Alzheimer's. Unfortunately, although it's much less common, people younger than 65 can also develop Alzheimer's. Approximately 200,000 Americans younger than 65 are currently living with what we call younger onset Alzheimer's or early onset. And in some cases, people develop this disease in their 40s or 50s. So now we're going to watch a video from one of our experts, Dr. Heather Snyder, and she's going to explain how Alzheimer's and dementia are related. And here is Dr. Snyder.
Dementia is the umbrella term for an individual's changes in memory, thinking, or reasoning. There are many possible causes of dementia, and Alzheimer's is the most common cause. Other causes of dementia are vascular dementia, which is marked by changes in the blood flow and the blood vessels in the brain. Dementia with Lewy bodies, identified by specific brain changes throughout the brain that include the buildup of a protein known as alpha-synuclein. And frontal temporal dementia, which is marked by brain cell loss in the front sections of the brain or the frontal lobe. Each type of dementia may have distinct characteristics to cause specific behaviors in the individual. But there is also some overlap in behaviors among the types of dementia.
So as you see, she just briefly discussed dementia as the umbrella. Other types of dementia are also listed on the right side of your screen. So we can say that if you have Alzheimer's, you have dementia. But if you have dementia, it may not necessarily be Alzheimer's, which is why getting a diagnosis is very important. And so now we're going to hear from a caregiver, Gail, whose husband is living with dementia with Lewy body.
Certainly, having the diagnosis of Lewy body was helpful in our planning because we began to understand where this was coming from in the brain, where otherwise we would not have known. Like we knew something was happening, but what was it? To give it a label actually helped, although it was a big umbrella. It explains some of the characteristics and symptoms that we were experiencing and seeing.
And I do also want to mention at this point that other things do look like dementia, which is also why it's important to go and talk to your primary care physician or a health professional. Other things can look like dementia: hearing loss, infections, certain medications. So that's why it's important to talk to your health professional and don't be frightened of the diagnosis. Here's a recap of what we just talked about and how dementia is the umbrella term for other dementias besides Alzheimer's, and why we now can understand that Alzheimer's is not necessarily a part of normal aging. Now, it's important to talk about the brain and Alzheimer's disease. And so we'll be hearing from another expert, Dr. Maria Carrillo, on the brain and Alzheimer's disease.
More than 100 years ago, Dr. Alzheimer described specific changes in the brain, what we now call the formation of plaques and tangles. Alzheimer's is a progressive brain disease that's marked by these key changes and impacts memory, thinking, and behavior. The brain has three main parts: the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the brainstem. Each one plays a role in how the body functions. Alzheimer's disease causes nerve cells to die, which leads to brain tissue loss and causes loss of function and communication between cells. These changes can cause the symptoms of Alzheimer's, such as memory loss, behavioral issues, problems with thinking, planning, and at the end stage, swallowing.
And I don't want you to lose hope because I do want you to know that they are working on new medications, as well as they have found substantial improvement can be made in our overall brain health by working on different lifestyle changes. And I'll talk about that later on in the program here, as well as we have a wonderful presentation on healthy living for your brain and body, which is another Alzheimer's Association presentation. But just to recap, it's been over 100 years already that Dr. Alzheimer's first described the specific changes and found out about the amyloid plaques and the tangles that cause the nerve cells to die, which then leads to shrinkage in the brain. And so this is what results in changes in memory, thinking, and behavior. Let's find out, though, who's at risk. Everyone with a brain is at risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. These are a few known factors that increase a person's risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. So let's see if you know which one is the most common. What is the greatest known risk factor for Alzheimer's disease? What do you think it could be? The answer is age. As mentioned, these are all known factors: genetics, family history, and age. But however, age is the greatest known risk factor. And we're going to hear from Dr. Snyder again about this.
Alzheimer's disease is marked by specific brain changes that result in the clinical changes in individual experiences. That is, changes in memory, thinking, or reasoning. And ultimately, Alzheimer's is fatal. The exact cause for these changes is unknown, but there are some hints as to what may contribute to an individual's risk. Age is the greatest known risk factor for Alzheimer's, and when we look at populations of people, we see an increased risk over the age of 65. However, Alzheimer's is not normal aging. Family history is also a known risk factor. Research has shown that those who have a parent or a sibling with Alzheimer's are more likely to develop the disease, and that risk increases if more than one family member has Alzheimer's. When we talk about the genes involved in Alzheimer's, there are two categories that could potentially be involved: risk genes and deterministic genes. Risk genes increases an individual's risk for developing the disease, but does not guarantee that they will develop Alzheimer's. Deterministic genes, which are rare for Alzheimer's, guarantee that the person will develop the disease.
So we've just heard a couple of the causes of Alzheimer's. Again, not part of the normal aging process. To me, what's interesting is that if you have a family history, what do they mean by that if it's not genetic? What they mean by that is that family history can be impacted by environmental causes, where you live, socioeconomic factors, how easily accessible do you have health care provided to you? What are your lifestyle choices? Are you a smoker? Are you taking care of high blood pressure? And these might affect those risks. Another interesting fact is that in addition to the main risk factors for the general population, Latinos, African Americans, and women are at higher risk for Alzheimer's. Research shows that older Latinos are about 1.5 times as likely as older whites to develop Alzheimer's and other dementias, while older African Americans are about twice as likely to develop the disease as older whites. Studies have confirmed that African Americans and the Latinx communities tend to have higher rates of hypertension, obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular problems. Now, this could be due to health disparities that exist in some of these populations and access to health care. But nonetheless, it puts them at higher risk for developing Alzheimer's disease. As far as women are concerned, women are more likely to develop the disease than men. It's estimated that 3.4 million American women are living with the disease today. We know that women live longer than men, making them more likely to develop Alzheimer's since age is one of the factors, but longevity and lower death rates can only partially explain this difference. So researchers are exploring how genetic differences between men and women may impact their disease risk. They're studying the fact that maybe the female hormones of estrogen or progesterone have something to do with this as well. So here's just a little brief recap of what we talked about, that age is the greatest known risk factor, family history, what risk genes and deterministic genes are, and why certain populations are more at risk for developing Alzheimer's. Now let's just talk a little bit about the stages of Alzheimer's disease. The progression of Alzheimer's disease from brain changes that are unnoticeable, to the person to brain changes that cause problems with memory and eventually physical disability is called the Alzheimer's disease continuum. And we are going to hear from 3 people that are facing some of the challenges of living with dementia.
I'm like an overachiever. And when you're unable to deliver or you're not performing at the same pace that you once did before, that's frustrating. It's frustrating to not know where you place things. It's frustrating to not be able to explain to someone the problems that you're having. You can't articulate it in a way. It's frustrating to read something and you forgot what you read. It's frustrating to continuously have to change your password and you just changed it last week and you're constantly doing the same thing over and over again.
Now we're going to hear from Phil.
Math, I can't do a simple tip anymore. You know, I sit there, I stare at it. It's crazy what numbers I can't deal with anymore. And in some ways, that's the disease to me. The other thing that I've increasingly been struggling with are words, which I've dealt with words my entire life. You know, as an avid reader, as a reporter, as a writer. I struggle with them now.
And now Tom, who's living with Lewy body dementia.
I think the thing that surprises me the most about my dementia is that it is progressive, and I'm finding that I'm forgetting more. And they do memory tests for me all the time at the doctor's, and so that becomes a little disconcerting at times. To see my cognitive impairment continue to decline. But again, I really have hope. I don't live really in the future. I can't live in the future. I can't worry about what the future is going to bring. I have to live for today.
So you heard the frustration and you heard the hope in these individuals. This is the Alzheimer's disease continuum. As you see in the teal, that can start as early as the 40s, that the brain, the amyloid plaques are developing in your brain and the tangles. You don't see any symptoms of that, but that's why I say it's so important to really think about in your 30s and 40s having lifestyle habits that keep your brain healthy. Next, you move on to the early stage of cognitive loss, which is called mild cognitive impairment, or MCI, which is due to Alzheimer's disease. And that's where you're still functioning, but you may be starting to forget things, but your activities of daily living are still, you're still able to function. The last one in the purple is known as the third phase. And that is for people who do develop dementia due to Alzheimer's will experience more serious changes in memory, thinking, and behavior. This phase is further broken down into stages called mild, moderate, and severe, or sometimes they're called early, middle, and late. And these stages reflect the degree to which symptoms interfere with the person's everyday activities. This was something that I saw in my mom. Sometimes it can be quite startling. She was walking one night when I put her to sleep, and the next morning she was unable to walk. So everyone develops things different. So it's important to understand that the stages of Alzheimer's are general. And because each person living with the disease has a unique experience, we can't always neatly place an individual into one specific stage. And in fact, some people show overlap of symptoms in this different stages. However, it does help us to get a little bit of a better understanding of the progression of the disease. And as it progresses, the person's behaviors will change, as does the role of the caregiver. So these stages can help a caregiver prepare for what to expect and how best to respond. So this is the recap. Again, we showed there are the three stages: asymptomatic, MCI, and the dementia phase. And again, it's important to realize that no two individuals experience this disease the same way. So what's available? You know, what hope can we offer to people? Because until recently, the only treatments available helped with some of the cognitive symptoms of Alzheimer's. However, they did not do anything to modify or slow the disease. And the treatments help to address the symptoms. Some of them, if any of you have any person that you love or care for yourself are taking some of them, they would be something like Aricept, Exelon, Namenda, Namzaric. So those are the medications that help to treat some of the symptoms. And then there were some new medications that came out just recently. So I just want you to see this screen here. What we see is that in 1906 was when the disease was first described, but it wasn't until 1996 that the first medication came out, and that was to help with symptoms, to mitigate some of the symptoms themselves. And it wasn't until 2021 that a medication called aducanumab or Aduhelm was approved by the FDA to be able to address some of the underlying causes of Alzheimer's, which we believe would be the amyloid plaque. Now, Aduhelm, and there's some more in the pipeline, lecanemab. If I could say these, I would be really, I'd really feel good about it. But anyway, those are the names of them. And those are monoclonal antibodies. And what they do is they target the amyloid plaque so that it doesn't become sticky, so that the nerve cells don't get suffocated, so that they can transmit the information that is needed to the brain. But the bottom line is, again, because everyone experiences Alzheimer's differently and the treatments work in varying degrees. I can tell you, sometimes the medications worked for my mom, the symptomatic medications, sometimes they didn't. We encourage people who are interested in learning more about the treatments to have a conversation with their healthcare professional. Now, the next discussion points that we're going to talk about are advancing Alzheimer's research. In the last decade, researchers have made enormous strides in understanding how Alzheimer's disease affects the brain, and many recent insights point towards promising new strategies for treatment, prevention, and diagnosis.
This is an incredibly exciting time in Alzheimer's and dementia research. The advancements that we've made in the last decade to understand the disease as a continuum, meaning that the biological changes are starting a decade or more before someone is experiencing the changes in the memory and thinking. This sets the stage for possible prevention. The idea that when we have the tools to identify those individuals at the earliest time point, and when we have the interventions to target individuals at that earliest time point, we can intervene to stop or slow the progression of the disease before an individual loses their memories.
Growing evidence indicates that people can reduce their risk of cognitive decline by adopting key lifestyle habits. More and more research shows that factors like exercise, nutrition, and aggressive management of cardiovascular risk factors may impact our ability to slow cognitive decline as we age. And through current studies, we're exploring how certain lifestyle factors may even reduce the risk of developing Alzheimer's and dementia.
That was what I was talking about earlier. And, those are things that we can do now without medication. It's remarkable.
A lot of hope does come from the Alzheimer's Association, all the research that is being done. Even though there is not a cure today for the disease, I know in my heart there is going to be a cure one day. And I know we're getting closer for that cure. Because even if you fail in a research study, you learn from that failure in the research study. That failure always brings progression.
It's nice to see the association spearheading in many ways the emphasis on getting the money at the federal level and at the private sector to get the research done so that someday there will be an effective treatment, hopefully cure, hopefully prevention. It's nice to see.
Oh, sorry. And now we're going to hear why it's so important to have these clinical studies.
Participating in a clinical study is one way that everyone can get involved in a very direct way in the fight against Alzheimer's disease. And for people who currently have dementia or Alzheimer's disease, there are some additional benefits. You get access to very close medical care. You also may be among the first people to have access to the treatments that will eventually prove to work.
You might hear the phrase negative trial, which means it didn't hit the endpoint. It didn't result in an FDA-approved treatment for the disease. But I think the only negative trial is one that doesn't provide us with valuable information. If the trial is well designed and is a good scientific experiment, we can get extremely valuable data that can help plan the next trial and make it even better than the last one. And it gets you that much closer to that FDA-approved drug, to that effective treatment, and maybe someday even prevention.
So as we just heard, everyone can help to advance Alzheimer's research. If you have Alzheimer's, if you don't have Alzheimer's, if you don't have dementia, but the only way to make sure that future treatments are effective for people of all races and ethnicities is to increase participation in clinical research. So let's take a look at Trial Match.
By participating in clinical research, you can move us toward methods of treatment and prevention for all those affected by this devastating disease. Alzheimer's Association Trial Match is a free clinical studies matching service for those with dementia, caregivers, and healthy volunteers. To start, simply create a confidential user profile and receive a list of studies that may be a match for you. Don't just hope for a cure, help us find one.
So let's take a look at what we just discussed. Scientists have increased their understanding of Alzheimer's significantly over the past decade. People living with the disease, caregivers, and healthy individuals without dementia are needed to participate in clinical studies in order to find methods of prevention, treatment, and ultimately, hopefully, a cure. Both drug and non-drug studies are taking place across the country and online, and it's really easy to sign up for them. Clinical studies may provide participants with cutting-edge treatment and additional medical care. Trial Match is a free clinical study matching service for people interested in participating in Alzheimer's research. Alzheimer's is difficult. However, no one has to face the disease alone. And so let's learn a little bit more about the Alzheimer's Association and how we help individuals and families. Here's our mission statement. The Alzheimer's Association leads the way to end Alzheimer's and all other dementia by accelerating global research, driving risk reduction and early detection, and maximizing quality care and support. Our vision is a world without Alzheimer's and all other dementia. And what's incredible about the resources here, I know Andrew mentioned it in the beginning and I mentioned it in the beginning, but it's wild how much is available online at alz.org. And the phone number, 24/7 helpline, with translators, I believe it's 200 languages that they offer translations for, and someone is there to always help. I'm going to listen to Tim right now.
I've had a couple of phone calls that I've been able to make in to the call center when I've had a couple of quick questions that I wanted to ask. You know, there's been a couple of nights, 2 o'clock in the morning, you have questions, you have anxieties, and I was struggling dealing with them, and it's amazing. It was one of the best things I ever did was keeping the call center on my favorites now. Just to know that there's somebody you can call who is aware of what you're going through.
So these are the people that they're going to connect you to are master's level clinicians, and they're available around the clock, and they provide in-depth care consultations. a free of charge navigation service offered to families at any stage of the disease. They'll help set you up with someone that can come to the house and take an interview with you and see what's the best way to help the family out. Amazing. And now we're going to hear from Teresa again.
When I went to the Alzheimer's Association website, which is alz.org, then I was trying to find out more about what was Alzheimer's, what really is this disease, what is younger onset Alzheimer's, what is dementia, is there a cure, how long has this been around, how many people are affected by this, where can I go for resources, where can I go for help, what do I do with this? How can I handle this? Is there more people like me out there? Is there someone that I can talk to if I need to? And there I found the support line that's 24 hours a day. And there I found where I can go for workshops, where I can go and read things and postings that people have done, where I can find out what events is happening in the Alzheimer's Association, where I can see how it's affecting people around the globe.
And there's specifically, as I mentioned, caregiver groups as well, which provide a lot of support for communities, just to talk to somebody else, maybe get some ideas, maybe get some hints of how to deal with a combative person with Alzheimer's, how to deal financially, who are the best people to speak with. So it really provides a wonderful, wonderful level of support.
Since I've been diagnosed with dementia, the one place that I know I can go to for assistance and help and support is to the Alzheimer's Association. There are people there that I know by name that I can contact if I'm having a difficult time or if I'm struggling to find some resource, that they will provide that to me.
Yes, so that is alz.org/CRF for Community Resource Finder. And that is affiliated as well with AARP. And it provides a wealth of community-based resources in your area. You just go to that website, there's a little drop-down menu where you can put in your zip code, and right away will generate all sorts of different areas within where you live that provides certain kinds of community-based services, local association offices, and their offering of programs and support services. So that is another key part of what the resources are being offered. And now you might be wondering, gee, I'd really like to become a volunteer. I'd like to help in this fight, which is wonderful. So here are some ways that you can join the fight. You can volunteer like I do. There's all sorts of different kinds of volunteer opportunities. Some of them include community educating, which I do, but you can also just go to your to the website and see what maybe floats your boat. You think this is something that I really could do, and it really feels good that I'd be able to do it. Another area is advocacy. We really need people that are interested in helping to get our voices heard. And it's really been quite amazing how the Alzheimer's Association has helped with getting some of these newer medications passed through so that the FDA could look at it and say that they were good to go, as well as getting funding for them, because these drugs are super, super expensive, and Medicare, Medicaid, it was struggling to get them to cover it. And because of the Alzheimer's Association, they've had a real impact on the ability to cover some of the costs. Then we did talk a little bit about Trial Match. And again, very, very easy to use. Again, just go alz.org/trial match, walks you through a very easy way to register and see what you could do for that. Many of you know about Walk to End Alzheimer's. Maybe you've also participated in it. It's an incredible event given all over the country, all over different venues in the state. New Jersey has one, Bradley Beach. It's always been really fun. And I know they have others around the area as well. And it's actually very uplifting. And to be able to know that you're raising funds to help benefit Alzheimer's care and support and research. And the last one is the longest day, which just passed. It's the solstice, the summer solstice. And again, it's another way of raising funds to be able to help with research. And that, my friends, is the end of the presentation. And I would be so happy to open that up to any of you that might have any questions for me. And maybe Andrew, you can help me out with that if you can see that in the chat.
All right, thank you so much, Sally. We can go ahead and see. There is a request from one of the Alzheimer's Association's members that if you wanted to send to the host and panelists in the chat your zip code, that helps them figure out where people are interested from and where they can kind of target some resources and see maybe who's attending from different areas. So if you want to send your zip code in the chat and just designate it to the host and panelists, that would be much appreciated. Um, when would someone who has already been diagnosed with dementia at age 70 be tested for Alzheimer's?
Initially, I believe the first stop would be to their primary care physician. You said that already diagnosed?
All diagnosed with dementia at age 70, when should they be tested for Alzheimer's?
I would think that the place where they got that diagnosis would be able to refer them for further testing of that. But again, I'm not sure. Jennifer, if you're on, maybe you have the answer to that. But I believe you would go back to your healthcare professional and ask where. There are, Rutgers has a dementia Alzheimer's program, so you might be able to contact them. I think St. Peter's might. So there's certain hospitals and universities that do have that kind of a program that can help further diagnose.
I've heard the side effects of these medications are worse than the benefits they provide. Any thoughts?
Which medications are you talking about? The ones for symptoms or the new ones to help stop the disease from getting worse? Because again, any kind of medication, as we know from the many commercials we see, most of the commercials are spent telling you how many side effects you can get. Sometimes you listen to them and you're like, no, thanks. I think I'll live with what I have. But every medication has the possibility of side effects. And again, you just have to weigh, is it worth those side effects? For some people, I've heard that the ones that help to prevent the aggression of someone who is in that last stage of Alzheimer's, that they can, be very combative, that sometimes it's worth the side effects of that medication to be able to prevent that from happening. So again, it's a balancing act. You have to weigh what makes the most sense.
Yeah, they responded with any of the medications, and the thought was that since there is no cure, why bother?
Mm. Because it can slow it down. Um, the new medications that are out can possibly slow it down, give you 3 months, 6 months more of being present with your family, with your loved ones. So again, it's kind of like the medication. You have to weigh what makes sense for you. But like I said, the hope with these lifestyle changes for people who haven't been diagnosed with any form of dementia or Alzheimer's, just knowing that there is something that you can do for yourself, for those family members that you love, by just doing some simple lifestyle changes, making sure you keep your blood pressure under control, making sure that your weight is under control, getting good exercise, physical exercise, staying social. Believe it or not, it's a very important component on brain health is being social, being with people. Sleep is another one that is, believe it or not, very impactful on preventing and helping to keep your brain healthy. So I see there's one, is there any risk or concern to getting an official diagnosis? Um, that's been, I believe, that's been some of the pushback from people not wanting to even go to their doctor to find out if what they have is Alzheimer's or is dementia. I can only say that they're probably living very concerned and very worried about what they do have. And like I said, sometimes it's not even that. It could be related to a hearing loss. It could be related to a urinary tract infection or some other infection, or a new medication that you're taking that has side effects that looks like it might be dementia. How it relates to the coverage in your health care, everything today is kind of up in the air, right? So I don't know how to answer that question. I'm so sorry.
I'm over 80 now and I'm trying to walk every day and eat healthy foods. Is there a number of how far I should walk each day?
Uh, it's funny because I just saw something that said that 10,000 step thing is not real. That it was developed by a pedometer inventor, and that was just his baseline that he wanted to do. I do believe that any amount of physical activity is helpful. You don't want to go over what you can do, what you feel good doing. And just getting out there and doing something is the best thing.
What is the association doing to address the cuts in federal funding for medical research? And what can we do to support your mission?
Mm. Jennifer, maybe you can address that for us. Jennifer is on the chat. She's going to put her answer, I believe. She's on the Zoom. She'll put her chat answer in the box there. She is the director here for the Greater New Jersey chapter. I mean, obviously, one of the things you can do just off the top is call your call your congressperson, call your legislator, sign up for the walks, that kind of, make people aware that our voice needs to be heard. The support group, oh, thank you, Andrew. There he is. It's right there. 1-800-272-3900 is the association's hotline that you can call, or helpline that you can call. And like I said, it's 24/7, and great people there to answer your phone call and answer your questions. I don't know if some of you saw Jennifer's response about the person who asked about the original diagnosis, that the doctor that assisted in your original diagnosis can assist with a more specific diagnosis for Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia, or refer you to a specialist. Some of the tests that can be done are MRIs, PET scans. Now there's a new blood test that's in the pipeline that looks like it's very promising in helping to determine whether or not your amyloid protein levels are high, as well as a spinal tap with cerebral spinal fluid would also give a diagnosis. So there are other tests available. They are involved, though. Some of them are pretty involved.
Are there any types of treatments that are currently available outside of the United States but are hung up with the FDA?
It's a great question, but I don't have an answer for that. Maybe looking on the website, there might be an answer to that. I know we look for hope wherever we can, right?
Somebody asked, what are your thoughts on hoarding? And, are hoarding tendencies a symptom or a sign of maybe dementia or other, at least cognitive or memory related issues?
I'm not an expert on that. I couldn't say, I'm sorry. I know when I've done the warning signs, there is a workshop that has the 10 warning signs. I haven't seen that as one of the possible warning signs.
Somebody's asking if you can go over the stages for Alzheimer's and dementia again.
So there is the asymptomatic stage, which is the first stage, which can start as early as age 40. And that would be that there are some changes in the amyloid plaques in your brain starting to possibly coalesce and coagulate together. And again, you would not necessarily see any symptoms from that. And that is called the first phase, which is the asymptomatic. And then as the disease progresses, the person will begin to experience mild symptoms, but they'll still be able to independently perform most activities of everyday living. So they could still eat, they can still dress themselves, wash, hygiene is still good. But in this phase, they might start being more forgetful, asking more questions, repetitive questions, forgetting appointments, not necessarily wandering, but, be concerned with not remembering how to get to a location that they normally would have gotten to. And in this phase, the person may be diagnosed with something called mild cognitive impairment, or MCI, and that's an early stage of Alzheimer's disease. And it can develop for multiple reasons. And individuals that live with MCI may go on to develop dementia due to Alzheimer's, but others may not. So it's not a definitive diagnosis for Alzheimer's. In the third phase, people who do develop dementia due to Alzheimer's will experiencing more changes in memory, thinking, and their behavior will change. And then that last phase is broken down into 3 stages called mild, moderate, and severe, or early, middle, and late. And those reflect the degree to which the symptoms impact their activities and physical changes that may occur. And towards the end, the swallowing, the walking, not being able to participate much in life. I hope that answers your question. And remember, everybody's different and they experience these stages differently, faster, slower. Again, every individual experiences it differently.
All right. I don't see any more questions, so I just want to say thank you, Sally. We really, really appreciate you being here and the presentation today, and Jennifer for supporting in the chat.
Yeah, thanks,
We're
Jennifer.
glad that the Alzheimer's Association could present today. And thank you everybody for attending. We hope you found this very, very informative. And as we've kind of repeated again, if you do have questions or you want to follow up for more information, check out the Alzheimer's Association's website. Whether you want to peruse it on your own or call and get some advice, please feel free to take advantage of this really, really great resource.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. I do appreciate you welcoming me here today. Thanks.
All right. Everybody be safe, be well, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Adios.